Crack, my cabin door exploded inward like a stick of dynamite had just gone off. Splinters of 100-year-old oak whistled across my living room, turning my peaceful mountain morning into the opening scene of a disaster movie. I damn near dropped the mug of fresh coffee I'd poured for my guest, just standing there like a statue as the debris scattered across the hardwood, because honestly, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Every deer for 5 miles probably bolted for cover, but what stepped through the wreckage was scarier than any wildlife I've seen in these woods. Victoria Steele, chairwoman of our HOA, stormed in looking like a villain from a high-budget action flick, crowbar raised like a medieval sword, hair-perfect suit, immaculate face redder than a stop sign, and wild with that mix of self-righteous fury and genuine unhinged energy. "Got you!" she shrieked, brandishing the crowbar at me like she expected it to shoot lasers. "You thought you could hide from the HOA forever, Marcus Chen, but your little game is over." Her voice actually cracked on that last bit, and as she stomped into my home, her designer heels crunching the very door she'd just destroyed, I realized this woman had finally lost the thread. Now, I've seen Victoria mad before. At HOA meetings, she'd blow a fuse over mailboxes, being an inch too tall, or Mrs. Patterson daring to plant yellow daffodils instead of HOA-approved white pansies. But nothing ever prepared me for this level of madness. Imagine a middle-aged lady in Chanel swinging tools like she's prepping for a Marvel audition. I mean, my grandmother never warned me about this kind of crazy when she convinced me to take over the old family cabin 6 months ago. Grandma Rosie always made this place sound like a little slice of heaven. "The mountains will heal whatever's broken in you," she'd say, "swearing that out here among the pines, you'd find your peace, not trouble." She never mentioned anything about deranged HOA presidents or property law battles. For the past 4 months and change, that cabin had been my sanctuary, a quiet spot to write code, drink coffee with the sunrise, and let the city drama fade into distant memory. That dream shattered literally when Victoria brought the apocalypse to my doorstep. Only Victoria had no idea she was about to face something bigger than me. Because sitting right there at my grandma's old oak table, cool as ice, was Judge Eleanor Blackwood. 62 hair silver and tied back navy sweater that made her look like the CEO of Wisdom. Eleanor had this way about her, a presence that could silence an entire courtroom with just an arched eyebrow. She'd come up to escape the noise of her job for a few days, old friend of my grandma and a legend in state legal circles. We were mid-conversation about pie recipes and her plans for retirement when Victoria did her best Jack Nicholson impression. "Victoria Steele," Eleanor said quietly, her voice carrying that signature judicial weight that makes even the bravest lawyers sweat bullets. She didn't even put her coffee down, just looked at Victoria, and the whole room seemed to freeze. Victoria's triumphant flush drained away her grip on the crowbar, loosening until it clattered to the floor metal on wood, echoing around the cabin. It was almost poetic. The woman who'd been a thorn in my side, 17 different violation notices, everything from mailbox height to bird feeders to my so-called aggressive landscaping, was now standing in my living room, looking like she'd just realized she'd accidentally started a war with Switzerland. "Judge Blackwood, I didn't know you weren't supposed to be," she stammered suddenly, seeing all the wreckage she just caused, as if for the first time. "This is just HOA business routine enforcement." Victoria tried her words, getting thinner by the second, as Eleanor just stared. Not mad, not amused, just that clinical, disappointed mentor energy that must have haunted Victoria since law school. I could feel my own programming instincts kicking in, part of me itching to hit record on my phone because I had a feeling this was about to turn into the kind of drama you see in courtroom movies. Victoria had broken down my door to arrest me for HOA violations. Only she picked the worst possible day to go full dictator. Because sitting in my dining room was the very woman who'd ended Victoria's legal career 8 years ago. Silence stretched between them like a live wire, and I realized I was holding my breath, waiting to see which of these titans would blink first. Judge Blackwood stood every motion deliberate and calm, turning to face Victoria with that slow, practiced ease of a woman who'd commanded respect for decades. Victoria looked like she was debating whether to leap back through the broken door. Victoria Eleanor said, each syllable like a gavel strike, "You were always impulsive, even back when you practiced law. But breaking down doors with a crowbar, that's a new low even for you. And it wasn't cruel, just sad in a way that made you feel sorry for a split second." You could actually see Victoria flinch, and I realized this was personal old history coming to a head right in my living room. Victoria tried to rally Judge Blackwood. "This isn't what it looks like. Marcus, here's violated HOA rules for months, 47 separate infractions. I have the authority." But even she heard how crazy it sounded, standing in a sea of splinters, flapping her hands like a bird trying to explain away a hurricane. Eleanor took a step closer, Victoria retreating into the ruined doorframe. "Do any of these infractions involve actual violations of property law, or just the kind of arbitrary nonsense HOAs invent when they forget homeowners have rights?" Eleanor asked. That one landed hard. You could see Victoria scrambling for a way out, mind racing. That's when it hit me something Grandma Rosie once said about the cabin being protected. I shot to the oak cabinet, flipping through folders until I found it Property Rights and Historical Designation 1952. My heart thumped like I'd found the Holy Grail. "This cabin's been a historical site since '52, I read aloud. "It's exempt from HOA regulation, has been for 70 years. Victoria went even whiter, if that was possible. But as I kept reading, I realized there was more at play, a clause that pointed to something much bigger, something explaining why Victoria wanted this property so bad. She wasn't just a power-hungry HOA president. She'd been systematically targeting legacy properties for a massive real estate development. My grandmother's cabin was the last holdout. All those bogus violations and escalating fines, they were about pushing us out one by one. Before anyone could react, my best friend Tommy burst in, camera in hand, grinning like he'd just scored front row seats to the Super Bowl. He'd been documenting my whole battle with Victoria, and now he was catching the main event on film. Almost on cue, Detective Ray Morrison rolled up in his patrol car, usually a good guy, but today he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He'd gotten complaints from Victoria about trespassing and property damage. You could hear the disbelief in his voice as he surveyed the carnage. But the real twist, Morrison confessed Victoria had threatened his daughter if he didn't enforce her HOA crusade. My jaw hit the floor. I mean, you hear stories, but to see it unfold, Victoria threatening an 8-year-old girl just to get a cop to do her dirty work, that's villain-level stuff. And Tommy caught it all on camera, live streaming the whole showdown. That's when the plot thickened. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Hartwell, appeared at the door, moving slow but with a twinkle in her eye, pulling a sophisticated recording device from her cardigan. Turns out she was a retired FBI agent quietly building a case against Victoria for 22 months. When the FBI retires you after 30 years, you don't just stop noticing crime, she said, waving her evidence like a badge. She had the receipts, property records, fake ballots, intimidation, and financial fraud that went far beyond HOA shenanigans. I pulled out a manila envelope marked, "For Marcus, in case of emergency," in my grandma's handwriting. Inside a USB drive full of 20 years worth of HOA meeting recordings and a handwritten note. "Knowledge is the best defense against people who abuse power." As I plugged it in, Hartwell confirmed she and Grandma Rosie had been documenting Victoria's corruption for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment was now, because Victoria, realizing the walls were closing in, dialed up her crisis PR team, turned her own phone camera on, and began spinning her side for social media. "I'm being held against my will. Conspiracy, criminal intimidation." But Tommy's stream had already gone viral, showing the real story: crowbar, harassment, police, intimidation. People were glued to both feeds, local news vans swarming outside. Eleanor stepped into Tommy's frame, calmly laying out the whole fraud. Victoria Steele systematically acquired property using intimidation and fraud, threatened law enforcement families, and embezzled HOA funds. This isn't just bad governance, it's a criminal enterprise. She listed the evidence, holding up document after document, while the comment sections went wild, people rooting for the downfall of the ultimate HOA villain. Victoria made one last desperate play, accusing Eleanor of ethical violations because of her past friendship with my grandmother. For a second, you could hear the digital world pause. But Eleanor, cool as ice, admitted it all. She'd retired last week, specifically so she could join this case as a private citizen. No ethical conflicts, just a woman fighting for justice. And then, like clockwork, back up arrived 3 patrol cars and a federal vehicle. Neighbors poured in, arms full of evidence and stories, their fear finally replaced by relief. The federal agents calmly read Victoria her rights as the crowd outside swelled. Her social media army vanished, her PR team gave up, and the only thing left were the comments of people celebrating the end of her reign. The aftermath was almost as satisfying as the showdown. Victoria got convicted on 17 counts: fraud, intimidation, conspiracy. Her properties were sold to compensate her victims. Our new HOA, transparent and democratic, meets in her old house, now a community center. The resort project she dreamed of, dead and buried. And me? I sit on my porch, sunrise glowing on the ridge, coffee in hand, knowing that sometimes the good guys do win, especially when you've got cameras allies and a grandmother who believes in keeping receipts for everything. But here's the thing. What would you have done if someone like Victoria came for you? Ever face down a bully who hides behind the rules? Tell me, where do you draw the line between order and abuse, justice and revenge? Drop your thoughts below, because this story isn't over till every voice is heard.